Hi, my name is Yassah Lee, and I'm from Monrovia, Liberia, West Africa, and I currently reside in Florida. Growing up, my experience as a young person in a West African country is one of beauty. We didn't have a whole lot, but my parents worked really hard, to provide for us. And so my life was pretty happy. I had a happy childhood. My family was huge, and we were always just enjoying each other's company. I remember, running around in the yard and climbing trees and, picking the fruit before it was ready and having worms and all of that crazy stuff of childhood. But my childhood was really blessed and happy. My parents were medical people, so they were always working, but they took care of us, and they provided a stable home that we could be free to be who we were. And I just really enjoyed my childhood. In 1988, I graduated high school, and of course it was an exciting time. I was ready to take on the world and of course go to college, because that is one of the things that my family instilled in us, that we were going to college. My sister recommended, my oldest sister, who was a sociology professor, she recommended that I take a year to do vocational training so I could have some skill that would help me to get a little job while I was pursuing my college career. So that's what I did. Because I was only 16 at the time, she didn't think I was ready for the big world of college, in our country. So my parents listened to her advice, and that was good advice, because I even use that skill today. But a year later is when things began to take a drastic turn, and the Civil War broke out. When the war broke out, we heard that the soldiers were displacing families to their territory as they came closer to the capital city. So we packed our bags and got ready to leave. And when they finally came to where we were, we walked maybe about 15 or 20 minutes away from where we lived, and found an empty house. And that's where we stayed for about 6 months. Now, when I say empty, I'm talking about no curtains, no beds, no couches, nothing, absolutely nothing was in the house. So we took our clothes out of our bags, and that's what we put on the ground to sleep. We had to go and get water from the well to take showers. And when that became a little bit too difficult, we just put barrels right under the roof, the eave of the house, so that when it rained, we could have water, drinking water, cooking water. And that's how we lived for that period of time. It was definitely a shock for me, because like I said, my family, we weren't wealthy, but we had, the comforts of life. And so that was difficult, but we know that God sustained us in that time. Eventually, my father decided that we were going to leave that area and go to a more comfortable area. And it would take us 3 days to get to where we could get a vehicle to transport us where we were going. During that 3-day trek, I remember checkpoints where we had to be searched by the rebel soldiers, and they were looking for any sign of someone who was an enemy. So they were looking for people who might be carrying a grenade or carrying weapons or something. So they treated us like we were the enemy. And I remember seeing bodies from people who had been murdered if they suspected them of being the enemy. So that was really traumatic when we finally got to the place where we could get our vehicle. But those memories stay with me. Those are things that I will never forget. I stayed in Liberia with my family for about a year, then moved to a country in West Africa for about 2 years, then finally came to the United States in 1993. When I moved to the States, I headed to Bethune-Cookman for my college career, and that's where I met my wonderful husband. and we got married and had our beautiful kids. And that part of my life has always been such a blessing. It wasn't until about 5 to 7 years later in my marriage that I realized that I was suffering from traumatic events that had happened during the war. I didn't realize it at the time, but I would get triggered really easily with loud noises, or just go into these moods just out of nowhere. I would be fine, and then maybe if I heard a loud noise, if my son made a loud noise in the house or something like that, it would just trigger me, and I would just get really, really angry and start yelling. And I didn't really show that part to anybody else, but when I was home and when it was just me and the babies, that's where I would really sense that I was feeling, the anger, and the depression kind of didn't come what in the way that you commonly would see it. Like, I wouldn't be sad all the time, but just those bouts of anger and just being really, really frustrated just for no reason. This went on for about a couple of years until I had this epiphany. God showed me that I was dealing with trauma, because how could I be one way completely fine with everyone else, but then go home and just be so angry when I was with my kids? It was at that moment that I realized that I had some healing that I needed to do. Some of the ways I was able to deal with the depression was to write, journal everything that I was feeling at a certain moment. And God would show me, this is the reason why you were triggered here. The loud noises took you back to a place where you felt helpless. I was able to write songs. I was able to receive healing in times of worship, in times of prayer. God even showed me that, when my father was killed, that was another thing that sent me into a place of helplessness and anger, just being able to express that in writing, and having my family as a support, my husband, my church family, being in a safe place. I was able to release those feelings and peel back the layers of depression, of trauma, of anger, and let go and begin to accept the person that I was meant to be. Depression can come out in all different forms. For me, it came out as anger. If you find yourself dealing with any of those emotions that are associated with depression, it's okay to reach out to someone to get help. Release Community Center is here to provide you with various resources to help you on your journey to healing. If you or someone you know is dealing with depression, Release Community Center offers information on ways to cope with depression. Hi, my name is Yassah Lee, and I've been released from depression.